Hi, my name's Araceli and I'll be helping you today. So first, I just want to go through a couple questions regarding your history. Are you on any medications or have you had any surgeries in the past, major surgeries?
No.
Okay. We're just going to go through a list of questions that I have for you. So what are we seeing you for today?
Stuttering.
Okay.
Everything.
When have you noticed or when did you notice that this started?
Um, Say around when I was 4 years old.
Okay. Um, what were your family's reactions to it? Or your parents or your siblings? Did they have any comments, any concerns?
Um,
How did they react?
well, my parents were fairly patient with me. I did receive a lot of criticism from my siblings, um, bullying in a sense.
What would they say if you don't mind?
Uh, what was that?
What would they say if you don't mind? Like, did they hurry you? Did they tell you to like speed it up, or like was it more just comments?
Yes, they would hurry me and they would mock me every time I try to speak.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. Um, and let's see. Does it happen very often, or does it happen like here and there? Like how often would you say it happens now?
Um, it happens more often when I'm speaking to a group
Okay.
or yeah, social events.
Okay. Um, and how long or for what period of time? I'm sorry. Um, have you been assessed when you were younger? Like, did you have any speech therapy? Did you receive services like in school or anything like that?
Yes, I did receive speech therapy um, in elementary school and in high school.
Okay. And then how long would that be, or that time that you received services were? Like, how long was that? Did you say until high school? Like, it was continuous?
Yes, it was continuous. I think I started around third grade, and I went to a K through 8 school. So after eighth grade, I continued in high school.
Okay. Thank you. And then with your treatment, did you notice like that your stuttering was better? Did you notice it was kind of the same? Did it get worse? Like, how do you feel the outcome was?
Um, it would help for a little bit, but I don't. Speaking in a group, it never really helped. I never really saw a difference. But whenever I was in therapy sessions, it helped to improvement. But out in the real world, it wasn't the same. It was still, I mean, it was still the same.
Okay, so you still had, so it helped in therapy. You felt you had a little bit of change, but then like more practical settings, like in the real world with friends, with groups, like you felt it was like the same.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And then let's see. How do you feel your stuttering affected you academically? Did you notice yourself like not participating as much in class, not raising your hand? How did it affect you like academically, would you say?
Yes, I would try to avoid speaking in front of the class as much as possible. Um, I hated it whenever the teacher picked me to read the section. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't really like to participate in class.
Okay. And what about socially? Like, did you have trouble making friends? Would you avoid talking to people and making new friends? How did that affect you socially?
No, I actually had a fairly good sized group of friends. Um, that didn't affect me with friends at all.
Okay. And how would you say it affects you with your occupation, like at work? Do you think it affects it at all?
Um, it affects it sometimes whenever I try to say something in a hurry, but usually at work, I don't really talk. I don't really communicate unless I have to, unless it's work related. And during lunch, I kind of stay to myself most of the time because of that. I don't want to stutter.
Okay. And in your personal life, how do you feel it has affected you, like with relationships, with significant others, family members?
Well, my significant other, she's really supportive of me. She's really good with that. She's a nice person.
Okay. And like family members and parents, everything's okay there too
Um,
now? Because I know you had said,
yes, with my parents, everything's good. My family members, cousins, is I think it's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so let's see. And did you personally notice your stuttering, or did someone else point it out to you, or did you like get comments? How were you made aware that you stutter?
Comments mainly from my siblings. I would feel it, but I didn't think it was as often, and I didn't think it was a problem until they started pointing it out, and then I started catching on to it
Okay.
more.
And okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. So, do you happen to avoid like certain words, um, or do you find yourself rephrasing sentences or phrases that you find difficult to say?
I try to avoid words that start with a Y. That's where mainly. That's where it affects me the most. So I do try to avoid those words to starting sentences with those words.
Okay. Do you find yourself avoiding certain social situations or speaking in front of certain people or like authoritative figures?
Mm, yes, speaking in a large group of people. Um, Authoritative figures, as in what? Can you?
Um, like in school, like with teachers or with your parents, with anyone that you feel like has like like that authoritative status.
No. In school, my teachers they were supportive of me and they would help me out, so I wouldn't have trouble talking to them.
Awesome. Okay. And then how does it make you feel to stutter?
It frustrates me.
Okay. Is that the only emotion you feel?
Yeah, I get really frustrated, and kind of makes me upset that I have it because I feel like I'm limited to a lot of like move up positions at work because I can't really communicate to a large group of people, so I can't. lead a group because I'll start stuttering. So yes, it makes me upset that I have that, and it frustrates me a lot.
Okay. But just so you know, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. It happens. But let me see. Hopefully we can get you started on therapy if you'd like, and then work on that a little bit more. So I just have a couple more questions. And so what would you say is your reason for seeking out treatment or therapy today?
My reason,
Hmm.
just to continue to improve, or at least feel like I am. When I was in school, I felt like the therapy sessions were good for me. Um, yeah, just for that.
Okay. And how motivated would you feel, or would you say that you feel about starting treatment and getting better?
Um, from 1 to 10, around a 9.
Awesome. That's really good. Okay. So that is pretty much it for my first couple of questions that I have for you. I'm going to do something called an oral facial exam, and basically I'm just going to have you do a couple things, just follow some instructions. Pretty simple. Um, so I will go ahead and get started here. And this is just going to take a little bit because I have to wait until the screen refocuses on you so that I could see you a little bit better. Okay, so can I first have you open your mouth? Okay, good. Can you move your jaw from side to side like this? Okay, awesome. Can you clench your teeth?
Clench my teeth.
Yeah, but like smiling so I could see? Okay, awesome. Okay, can you just sit and look straight forward for me for just a second, please? Okay, awesome. Can you wrinkle your forehead and look up at the ceiling without moving your head? Okay, good. Can you close your eyes as tight as possible? Okay, awesome. Can you pucker your lips? Like if you're gonna give a kiss? Okay. Can you puff out your cheeks? Okay, awesome. Can you smile pulling back the corners of your mouth? So a really big smile, a really cheesy smile. Okay, awesome. And then can you show me your teeth while frowning?
Like that.
Yeah. Can you do it again? Okay, there you go. Just wanted to make sure that I see you. Okay. Now can you say puh, puh, puh as fast as you can?
Pop, pop, pop.
Like, can you try to hold it as long as you can? I'm sorry.
Pop, 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 pop,
That's fine. And then can you do ta? So the same thing. Ta 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 ta. Okay, awesome. Can you try patika, patika, patika as fast as you can for as long as you can? Okay, awesome. Awesome. You did so well. Now, can you just say ah for as long as possible? Okay, that's good. Thank you. And then we're almost done. Can you shrug your shoulders? Okay, good. Open your mouth one more time. Can you stick out your tongue? Can you move your tongue from side to side? And can you go in a circle, please? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, and we're all done with our oral facial exam. Now I have a series of questions for you. These are just some protocols that I'm going to go through with you. So basically, I'm just going to ask you some questions, and you're going to rate them depending on how you feel. So for the first one, I'm going to give you a situation in which you can picture yourself speaking, and then I'm going to have you rate it as in you either speak fluently during this time, you typically stutter, or you experience anxiety and tension. Make sense?
Can you repeat that?
Okay. So I'm going to read some situations to you in which you try to picture yourself speaking in these situations, and then you're going to rate it on either one of three scales. Okay. So either you're going to tell me that you speak fluently during this situation, or you stutter, or you typically experience anxiety or tension during the situation. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
So when you have a telephone conversation, do you typically stutter? Do you speak fluently? Or do you have anxiety or tension?
I speak fluently.
Okay. What about when you introduce yourself, a self-introduction?
Sometimes it takes me a while.
So would you say that you speak fluently, that you stutter typically, or that you have anxiety or tension?
I stutter typically.
Okay. What about when speaking to your boss or supervisors? Would you
I speak pretty fluently for the most part.
Okay. What about a conversation with friends?
Pretty fluently.
Okay. What about having a heated discussion on a controversial topic?
A heated discussion. I feel like I speak pretty fluently.
Okay. What about when you talk to infants and babies?
Fluently.
Fluent? Okay. What about when you
Yes.
have to justify your actions to someone?
Stutter typically.
Okay. And then remember that you do have a third option, so it would be that you have tension or anxiety, okay? Um, what about justifying your actions to someone?
What was that? I said
Justifying,
stuttering.
I'm sorry?
Stutter typically. Stutter typically.
Okay. Narrating a personal experience.
Stutter typically.
Giving directions.
Stutter typically.
Asking for directions.
Stutter typically.
Saying something in a hurry.
Stutter typically.
Clarifying something that you said.
Mm, Stuttering.
Ordering at a restaurant.
It's pretty fluently because I usually just try to point at the menu.
Okay. Giving a quick answer to a question.
Stutter typically.
Singing a song.
Fluently.
Buying a ticket at the counter.
A ticket at the counter.
Hmm.
Um, pretty stuttering typically.
Talking to pet animals.
Pretty fluent.
Raising a question in a group discussion.
Stuttering typically.
Answering questions in a job interview.
Stuttering typically.
Asking for a specific product at the store.
Stutter typically.
Talking with my spouse.
With my spouse, pretty fluent.
Giving a formal lecture to a group.
Stutter typically. That one's more of anxiety. What was the third one?
Yeah, it was anxiety or tension.
Yes, anxiety, tension.
Quickly interjecting my comment in a group discussion or conversation.
Anxiety.
Okay. Returning phone calls.
Pretty fluently.
Okay. And then talking with my children.
Fluently.
Conversation with a member of the opposite sex.
Stuttering typically. Doesn't really make a difference.
Huh?
It doesn't really make a difference. It's kind of the same with everyone.
Asking for a pay raise.
Stuttering typically.
Okay. Reading out loud in front of a group.
Anxiety.
Okay. And then, so I would like you to complete the sentences that I have on here. So just tell me, what words do you typically stutter on?
Words that start with a Y.
Okay. Is that the only time that you noticed it?
For the most part, yes.
Now, which speech sounds, or I'm sorry, I guess that would be that one. Which speech sounds do you stutter on? So you stutter on the Y. Can I ask a quick question? Are you bilingual?
Yes, I am.
Would you say that you stutter on all words that start with Y in both languages, or do you feel like it's more in one versus the other?
It's also words that start with a U.
You.
U.
So do you feel like
Yeah,
it's more in one language, or do you think it's across both languages?
across both.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So we're done with the first one. We have two more, okay? Please
Okay.
bear with me. Okay, so the next one hopefully will go by a little bit faster. And for this one, again, I'm gonna read you the speaking situations, and I want you to rate them or score them. 0 being that they're not avoided, 1 being that they're infrequently avoided, so sometimes avoided, and then 2 would be frequently avoided, so always or a lot. Okay?
Okay.
So the first one, saying your own name. Do you not avoid
Not
it?
no. I don't know. I don't avoid it.
Okay, so 0. And then responding to roll calls.
No.
speaking situations where you move away from the speaking situation.
Do I avoid it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes, always.
sometimes.
Okay. Ordering in restaurants.
I don't avoid it. Like I said, I just point at it.
Okay. Speaking on the telephone.
Don't avoid it.
Introducing yourself.
You know what? Speaking on the telephone, I do avoid it. I prefer text messaging.
Okay. Would you say that you sometimes or you like always try to do it?
Well, sometimes because a lot of people still call me.
Okay. What about when you introduce yourself?
Um, I sometimes avoid it.
Okay. Giving personal phone numbers or addresses?
Sometimes I avoid it.
Speaking in front of the class or a social group?
Speaking in front of a class,
Or a
social group.
social group? Hmm.
I try to avoid it sometimes.
Okay. Reading out loud in front of a class.
Try to avoid it if I can.
Always, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Answering questions in the classroom.
Always try to avoid it.
Okay. Saying the names of family members.
Mm, sometimes I try to avoid it.
What names would you say those are?
The names I avoid.
Hmm.
Um, like Jessica, but in Spanish.
Okay. Okay. Is that the only one?
The only one I can remember right now. Yeah.
Okay. What about asking for directions when lost?
Um, sometimes I try to avoid it
Okay.
as my phone.
Are there any other speaking situations that you avoid?
Um, no.
Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we will rate strategies that are used to avoid stuttering. Okay. So, do you depend on others for your communication needs?
Sometimes.
Do you gesture instead of speaking?
Sometimes at work.
Do you have a family member ask for something in the store?
My significant other.
Sometimes, always.
Sometimes.
Do you pretend not to hear a question?
No.
Do you pretend to be thinking when questions are asked?
No.
Do you pretend to not know an answer?
Sometimes.
Do you pretend ignorance of a word on which stuttering is likely? So, do you pretend that you don't know a word because you know you're going to stutter on that word?
Sometimes.
Do you let others finish a word or complete your sentence?
That frustrates me when they do that.
Oh no.
No.
Okay. Do you cough or clear your throat before you say a difficult word?
Yes, sometimes.
Do you whisper?
That what?
Whisper?
No.
Do you talk in a soft voice as a sudden reaction? Um, or I'm sorry, and like a sudden reduction in the loudness on certain words. Like you can talk normal, and then when you get to that word that you get stuck on, you kind of start to lower your voice a little bit and then return back to normal.
Yes, I do that sometimes.
When talking in a loud voice, do you suddenly increase your loudness on certain words? But would kind of be the same, not the same, but it would be like the opposite. Instead of lowering your voice on the words that you don't know, you would speak normally, but then kind of like raise your voice to sort of deflect on the other ones. Like,
Sometimes, yeah.
okay. And then do you talk in an impersonated tone, like a character in a play?
No, I don't do that.
Do you talk with unusual physical posture?
Sometimes I do, yes.
Do you talk with exaggerated articulation,
No.
like over pronounced words?
Oh, yes. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other strategies that you use to avoid stuttering?
No.
Okay. And now we're going to talk about um, avoiding avoidance of conversational partners. Do you avoid strangers?
Yes.
Sometimes, all the time.
Sometimes.
What about family members?
Yes, sometimes.
Who would those family members be?
Aunts and uncles.
Okay. Do you avoid talking to bosses or authority figures?
Sometimes.
Do you avoid talking to persons of the opposite sex?
Sometimes.
Do you avoid colleagues,
Sometimes.
friends,
Yes, sometimes.
neighbors?
Yes.
Are there other conversational partners that you avoid?
Mm, Not that I could think of.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about avoiding certain words. So, do you substitute one word for another?
I start the sentence differently.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I try to start the sentence differently. So yes, I substitute.
Okay. Um, okay. Would you say that sometimes or would you say that a lot of the time?
A lot of times.
Okay. Do you beat around the bush instead of saying something directly? For example, when you're trying to explain something, I'm sorry. You can say something along the lines of like, you know, that thing that we saw at that one place that looks like this and it's this big and it's you kind of talk like that instead of saying what it actually is
Yes.
sometimes or a lot of the time.
Sometimes.
I know this is lengthy. Bear with me. We're almost done. We're getting towards the end. Do you pretend to not know a word?
Yes.
Sometimes, always.
Sometimes I do.
Do you substitute one word for the other? Like if you can't say one specific word, but you know another one that's kind of similar, you'll substitute them?
Yeah.
Sometimes, always.
Sometimes.
Okay. Do you refuse saying certain words?
No.
Okay. Do you say this thing and that thing a lot?
Yes.
Okay. And now we're going to talk about avoidance of talking about stuttering. Do you switch the topic when stuttering is mentioned?
Yes.
Sometimes, a lot.
Sometimes.
Do you leave the room when conversation is initiated about stuttering?
Yeah.
Sometimes, a lot.
A lot.
Okay. Do you get upset when you're asked about your stuttering?
Yes. A lot.
A lot, okay. Do you refuse to talk about other people's reactions to stuttering?
Yes. A lot.
Do you refuse to talk about colleagues or bosses' reaction to the stuttering?
A lot. Yeah.
Are you unwilling to talk about stuttering and associated emotional experiences?
Yeah. A lot.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about avoidance of talking in general. So do you keep quiet when asked a question? When a question is asked, I'm sorry.
If it's asked to a group, yes, I do keep quiet. If it's asked to me directly, I try to answer.
Okay. Do you avoid discussion on controversial issues?
Um, Sometimes, yes.
Do you not take part in social conversations?
Yes, I avoid that.
Sometimes, always.
Sometimes.
Do you avoid eye contact during conversation?
Um, no.
Okay. Do you reduce the amount of talking in general?
Yes.
Sometimes, always.
Sometimes.
Okay. We were done with that one. We need just the last protocol to go through. And then after that, we will go ahead and have a little bit of conversational talk, okay? So let me go through this last one and then I'll explain what we'll do after that. So with this one, we're gonna do pretty much the same thing, but you're gonna rate it as you're satisfied, you're somewhat satisfied, you're dissatisfied, or you're somewhat dissatisfied, okay? So in regards to your ability to talk with your family, are you satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, or dissatisfied? With,
Satisfied?
I'm sorry?
Satisfied?
Okay. With your ability to talk to your friends,
Satisfied?
with your colleagues,
Dissatisfied?
somewhat, or dissatisfied?
Somewhat.
Okay. With strangers,
Dissatisfied?
with your supervisors,
Somewhat. Dissatisfied?
with members of the opposite sex?
Somewhat,
Dissatisfied or satisfied?
somewhat dissatisfied.
Authority figures?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Your neighbors?
Dissatisfied.
What about your ability to order in restaurants?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Talking over the phone?
Somewhat satisfied.
Asking for directions?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Introducing yourself?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Giving your name and telephone number to others?
Somewhat somewhat satisfied.
Discussing controversial social or political issues?
Dissatisfied.
Giving a talk in front of a group?
Dissatisfied.
Quickly asking a question?
Dissatisfied.
Quickly responding to a question?
Satisfied. I
Use,
mean, dissatisfied. That was dissatisfied. I'm sorry.
okay. Use of the right words?
Dissatisfied.
Expressing your feelings and opinions?
Dissatisfied.
Interjecting your comments in a group discussion?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Talking to salespeople in stores?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Enjoy social relationships? I'm sorry. The next column will be about your ability to enjoy social relationships. So, how do you feel about your personal relationships?
Um, with my significant other,
Well, you can
or
do
it doesn't matter.
just personal relationships in general.
Fairly good.
So, would that be somewhat satisfied?
That's yeah, somewhat satisfied.
Okay. Achieve my educational goals?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Perform my job?
Satisfied.
Achieve promotions in my job?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
Generally achieve my life goals?
Somewhat dissatisfied.
And then this last one will be about your feelings and thoughts about yourself. So your level of confidence.
Um, Somewhat dissatisfied. Somewhat satisfied.
Someone satisfied. Okay.
Yeah,
Your general quality of life.
somewhat satisfied.
Okay. And we finished all of the protocols that I had for you. So now I'm just going to screen share something and I'm going to have you read a passage for me for about 5 minutes. I will go ahead and set a timer and you will read that for 5 minutes and I'll let you know when you can stop, but I'm pretty sure you can also hear my alarm. You can stop either when you hear the alarm or when I tell you, okay? We're going to do that first. And then after that, we will have a 5-minute conversation about a controversial topic, okay? So I will go ahead and start screen sharing so you can read. So you can start reading. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I will go ahead
Can you
and,
move your mouse, please?
oh yes, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and follow along with you so I know when to switch over to the next page, okay? You can go ahead and start reading now.
In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantage that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way. And I understand that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. And so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician. Sorry about that. Because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. most of the most of the confidences were unsought. unsought. Frequently, I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they them express them are usually pleasuristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that as father, my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies and parcel down inequality at birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more roche riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have unaffected scorn. His personality is a unbroken series of successful gestures. Then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impersonability, which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness, such as
Okay, so that's enough. Did you hear it?
yes. That's
Okay.
why I stopped.
Okay. I'm gonna stop screen sharing, and that was it for the reading. And now we get to have a little bit of fun. We're gonna talk for 5 minutes. I'm gonna set my timer once more, and we're gonna talk for 5 minutes about a controversial topic. So it could be anything that you want to talk about, or I can pull something off of my list. I have a couple on there, and we can start with one thing if we feel that we're running out of time. Well, not running out of time, that if we feel like we've kind of just hit the end of a discussion, and we still have time on the clock, then we can talk about something else, okay? Is there anything in particular that you want to talk about before I go through my list and suggest things?
Can you go through your list?
Okay. Give me just a second. Oh, hold on. Actually, I'm going to have to screen share again then. So give me a second because I can't. Here we go. So I have privacy issues between children and parents, immunizations / requiring children to be vaccinated before attending school. Do our votes really count? Age gap in a relationship. Is it selfish to choose a child-free life? Should all people have the right to own guns? And should juveniles be tried and treated as adults? Do you see anything there that you would like to talk about?
All people should have the rights to own guns.
Okay. So we can go ahead and talk about that. Let me stop screen sharing real quick. And if we need to go back to a different topic, I'll screen share again. So let me start my timer. Okay, so what is your position on that? Do you feel that all people should own guns?
Yes, I feel that the Second Amendment should not be messed with because it is constitutional to all of us. And we all have that right to bear arms.
Would you still, but think about it this way. Would you want people who are mentally unstable or who have negative, I guess, thoughts to get their hands on guns?
No, it's just like a vehicle. It's just like operating a vehicle. You won't give a driver's license to someone that's blind or a deaf person if they don't have any hearing aids. You won't give them a driver's license, or if they're um yeah. So it's restrictions apply, obviously. Um, medical restrictions, because I don't think you could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone with autism, I mean anyone with Down syndrome would have a driver's license, would they? Are they allowed to drive?
I mean, I
Am I,
feel
I may be
if it
wrong.
could pass, why not? I don't think that there's any
Well,
limitation.
yeah.
Um, I think the only limitation is like if you're legally blind, then yes, you cannot drive because that's a safety hazard. Um, I don't know if you mentioned it, but for example, I have deaf friends who can drive. So certain impairments
I have a cousin that's deaf and he drives.
don't like stop people from doing it. So I agree. But I had mentioned that about the people who were like mentally unstable because specifically it said, should all people have the right to it? And that would include like regardless of anything. So that's why I was saying that. But oh, you said something and I wanted to touch on it and I blanked
Yeah,
on.
but if you're blind, you're not gonna get a driver's license. They won't give it to you. Period. Even if you could see something, you just at the level of legally blind, they won't give you a driver's license.
Right.
So if you're mentally sick already, well, then obviously you shouldn't be owning a tool of that nature. And there's because I work in construction, and to operate heavy machinery, you have to be on it. Not just anyone could get on heavy machinery and operate it. And this, I think the same goes with firearms. And also, like heavy machinery, they could hurt people, but it's not the machine's fault. It's the one operating it. So all this stuff about gun violence and all that, I think it's who's handling the tool rather than the tool being the problem.
Right. So with that being said, um, because the topic was everyone owning guns and everyone having the right to own guns, um, that would include, so say that you are not, for example, like you don't have like a mental situation that would inhibit you from being able to have one. What would you say about people who knowingly have a criminal background or knowingly have say like a terrorist attack, or knowingly like that they have a history of violence, and then they're allowed to have guns? Like what's your comment on that?
If it was a terrorist attack, they would be in jail. If they had a terrorist attack on the record, they'd be in jail. If not, highly looked for by the authorities. And if they went to purchase a gun, I don't think they'd be able to.
So people with criminal backgrounds, what about people that
And,
have like
and guns,
and drive-bys and things like that?
well, yeah, most of those guns aren't purchased legally. They're purchased on the black market. So it's like drugs, opiates. People using opiates, they don't go directly to the doctor and get them from the doctor. They go through a dealer or sometimes a corrupt doctor that will take money for prescriptions, to sign prescriptions. So yes, there is always going to be contraband, but that's something you can't stop. And because even if gun laws were, if the Second Amendment was taken away from us, we still wouldn't be able to. You still wouldn't be able to control that because there's always going to be a black market, no
Right, but
matter what. And the people abusing of those weapons usually have weapons purchased off the black market. They are not legally purchased.
okay,
So, what?
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll continue.
What was that?
I was just gonna say that. With that being said, like, wouldn't people argue that yes, it's gonna happen regardless, but with the access to everyone having guns, wouldn't that make it easier for people like that to obtain them?
No, I think because how would that make it easy?
If
Because the black market doesn't come from people purchasing their guns legally and then selling them illegally, because that gun is still to their name. So whatever happens with that weapon, it goes back to the person who bought it legally because the serial number leads to them. So those guns, people getting guns legally doesn't have anything on again. It doesn't affect that. I feel like it helps it because the more people that have weapons, the less likely someone with a illegal with a gun purchased on the black market that person is less likely to, say, for example, shoot up a Walmart, because there's going to be 20 people in there, probably more, with concealed or open carry firearms, legally open carry or concealed, depending on the state.
Okay. Well, we met our 5 minutes a long time ago, but I wanted you to finish. So, okay. Well, thank you. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.